Some people think power is about muscles. Some think it's about money, and others believe it's about shouting loud enough to make everyone shake. But in Arima town, there once lived a woman who believed power meant fear. Fear in people's eyes, fear in people's voices, and fear in their silence. If she entered the place, conversations adjusted themselves. If she cleared her throat, adults sat upright, and if she shouted, even the innocent minded their business. Her name was Rita, a woman who did not just like control, she thrived on it. Marriage to her was not companionship and it was not partnership, it was leadership with volume. She believed a spouse must be trained early like a stubborn radio. Once you slap it hard enough, it will adjust. And for years, she lived proof that shouting worked until life did what it does best. Sit back, relax your shoulders because this is not just a story. It is the story of a woman who loved control and the quiet man who taught her what restraint looks like. Rita worked as the treasurer of the Arima Motor Park Union. That job alone gave her enough power to humble grown men. Drivers feared her pen more than police batting. Conductors greeted her with their two hands up. Even touts behaved when she passed. Rita loved power the way children love sweets. According to her philosophy, oh yes, Rita had the philosophy. A woman must never be soft. Soft women suffer, she used to say loudly, especially when other women were around. If you don't train a man early to how you want him to behave, you will regret it. Nobody asked her what training meant because they already knew. Her mouth was sharp, her eyes were sharper, and her anger always did not need an invitation. Now, let's talk about her first marriage. She married Kule Adeyemi, a calm secondary school teacher who believed shouting was for people who could not think. Kule was too gentle. He greeted everybody. He apologized even when he was right, and he believed marriage was about patience and understanding. Unfortunately for him, he married Rita. From the very first week, Rita made it clear that she was not interested in patience through her actions. Everything Kunle did annoyed her, even things he did not do. If Kunle talked, she complained. If he kept quiet, she accused him of plotting. If he tried to explain, she shut him down. Kunle slowly became quieter than a church rat. At home, Rita ruled like a military commander. Kunle woke up early, not because he liked mornings, but because peace depended on it. Neighbors noticed. They heard Rita's voice almost every evening. Do you think I married a child? Oga, use your head for once. People shook their heads, but nobody interfered. It's their marriage, they said. Husband and wife matter. Years passed. Kunle changed. The cheerful teacher became thin. His laughter disappeared and his shoulders bent forward like someone carrying invisible load. One evening, after a long day at work, he sat quietly in the sitting room, holding his head tired and thinking about his life. Rita came in. Why are you sitting like that? She asked sharply. Are you sick? Kule tried to answer, but his voice did not come out properly. That night, he did not wake up. Just like that, he died. People said it was stress. Some said it was high blood pressure. Others said, God knows best. Rita cried loudly at the burial. She cried so well that some people admired her acting skills. This woman loved him so well, oh, they whispered, but her neighbors exchanged knowing looks. After the burial, she returned to her normal life, not regretful and not reflective. Barely 3 weeks, she returned back to the motor park, standing with her arms crossed, correcting grown men like stubborn children. They apologized quickly because nobody wanted trouble, but behind her back, they whispered, this woman, eh? Even death couldn't change her. Soon, loneliness bored Rita, and boredom to her was unacceptable, so she decided to get married again. When she casually mentioned it to two women, one of them coughed and asked, again? So soon? The second added carefully, choosing her words like someone defusing a bomb. Rita waved her hand. I beg, life doesn't stop because of burial. Besides, loneliness is not healthy. The women exchanged looks. One of them gathered courage. But Rita, people will talk. Rita laughed a sharp, dismissive laugh. Let them talk. After all, people have been talking and people will keep on talking. Silence followed. Then Rita leaned forward, lowered her voice, and said something that made the women shift uneasily on their seats. This time, I will choose better. Better how? One of them asked. Rita smiled. I want a man that understands instructions. She snapped her fingers. A man that hears sits and sits, stand and stands. The women nodded slowly, pretending to agree. In their minds, they were already praying for the next victim. From that day, Rita began her search, but not within Arima town because everyone there already knew her story, her temper, and her reputation. Any man who married her would either be foolish or desperate, and Rita on her part wanted fresh ignorance. So she traveled. She took short trips to neighboring towns. Thank God for the nature of her job that made it so easy. She started observing men the way a butcher observes goats, checking behavior, posture, and confidence level. She rejected men who talked too much. She rejected men who laughed loudly, and she rejected men who looked her directly in the eye for too long. Too confident she would mutter. Then she arrived in Obara Coast. It was there she met Ezekiel Bello, or Zeke as everyone called him. Zeke was a tailor. Rita watched him for 3 days before entering his shop. She noticed things. He greeted customers politely, even rude ones. When someone complained unnecessarily, he apologized. When elders spoke, he bent his head slightly, and when children ran into his shop, he laughed and gently sent them away. Rita's heart warmed. This one will not stress me. On the day she entered, Zeke looked up and smiled. Good afternoon, madam, he greeted first. Rita did not answer immediately. She sat down heavily, crossed her legs, and surveyed the shop like an inspector. Are you the tailor here? She asked. Yes, madam, Zeke replied gently. Rita said. Good designs you have here. The man appreciated her. They got talking and she created a very peaceful atmosphere for them to become friends. Soon, they began to talk frequently. She traveled back to her base and the conversation continued. They were always on phone talking. Rita dominated the conversations while Zeke listened. She corrected him even when she was wrong, and he agreed. She tested him intentionally. She raised her voice unnecessarily. He stayed calm and apologized. In her mind, the checklist was complete, but what she did not know was that Zeke was also observing her quietly and carefully. Before proposing to her, Zeke asked questions, but not from Rita. He traveled to Arema town quietly and did his investigations. Still, he went ahead with the proposal. They did their wedding months later, and when Zeke moved into Arima town, after she convinced him that she would use her influence to give him more customers, she felt victorious. I chose well this time, she told herself confidently. From the very first week, Zeke behaved exactly as expected. Rita was pleased and strutted around Arima town with renewed pride. She was very happy. There was no arguments, no resistance, and no raised eyebrows. Just Ezekiel moving around the house like a well-trained assistant. Every morning, he woke up before dawn. Before the rooster even remembered his duty, Zeke was already sweeping the compound. By the time Rita rolled out of bed, stretching like a satisfied cat, he would greet. Good morning, my wife. Rita liked that greeting. It entered her ears like good music. Breakfast followed immediately. If Rita complained, Zeke would apologize. If she complained again about something else, another apology. At first, Rita felt victorious. This is marriage, she thought, and this is peace. She began to boast. At the motor park, she told the drivers proudly, my husband does not stress me, and I will not allow that stress to come from any of you. At home, she increased her demands. She tested Zeke. She would deliberately scatter things just to see if he would complain. Zeke cleaned silently. She would shout from the bedroom, Zeke, have you seen my phone? Zeke would run like a house help to look for it. She would then say, Oh, I am holding it. Zeke would smile and say, My wife, my wife. Something about that smile began to disturb her. It was too calm and too suspicious, but still, she didn't use her tongue to count her teeth. One Sunday afternoon, Rita invited her friends over, determined to show him off. Zeke was behaving like a woman rapper, and the women watched in silence. One of them whispered, This one is different. After they left, she increased the pressure. She started correcting him unnecessarily. Zeke listened, adjusted, and smiled. That was when Rita started feeling strange. She missed something. She didn't know what exactly, but something was missing. Where was the resistance? Where was the fear? Fear usually gave her satisfaction, but Zeke's obedience felt voluntary, and voluntary obedience irritated her. One evening, she decided to push harder, but Zeke remained the same, and she began to lose sleep. Why is he not angry? Why is he not complaining? Why does he even look like someone who is waiting? The next thing, she tried another tactic. Public embarrassment. Zeke did not feel embarrassed. He managed the whole situation and the table turned against her. That night, Rita decided to assert authority properly. She withheld dinner. She waited for Zeke to complain, but he didn't. He drank water and slept. Rita sat awake angry. The next day, she said to him, Why didn't you ask for food yesterday? Zeke replied calmly, Because you said there is no dinner, my wife. That answer irritated her deeply. She wanted anger and she wanted reaction, so she raised her hand for the first time, just slightly. Not to hit, but just to threaten. Zeke looked at her like a man, and the message passed through his eyes. Rita felt it and dropped her hand immediately. From that day, she began noticing strange things. Zeke's strength when lifting heavy things, his alertness, the way he moved, controlled and deliberate. Then, one early morning, hunger woke her up. She got to the living room and what she saw shocked her. Zeke was on the floor doing push-ups and counting quietly. 1, 2, 3. Why and who is he building for? She asked herself. Out of annoyance, she screamed. You are here doing 1 to 3 when your wife is hungry. I thought you vowed to take care of me. Zeke stopped, stood up slowly, looked at her and smiled. Good morning, my wife, he greeted gently. Enter the kitchen and cook something for us. Her mouth opened. No man had ever spoken to her like that without fear. She raised her hand again, this time to strike, and that was the worst mistake of her life. Rita's hand was in the air. That hand has ended many arguments in the past. Once it went up, people apologized. Once it went down, voices dropped. For years, that hand was Rita's final authority. But on this morning, something strange happened. Zeke did not flinch. He did not step back. He did not raise his voice and he did not even blink. He just stood there, calm, balanced and looking at her like someone who had already rehearsed this moment in his head. That alone confused Rita. Why are you staring at me like that? She barked. Zeke spoke calmly. My wife, put your hand down. Rita froze. What did you say? She asked slowly, disbelief creeping into her voice. I said, Zeke repeated gently, put your hand down. It is an abomination, and that I've been keeping quiet does not in any way make me a fool. You walk and I don't ask for your 1 kobo because I play my role as the head of this home. Don't throw the privileges you enjoy to the dogs. The room suddenly felt smaller. Rita laughed sharply. She stepped closer, hands still raised. That was when everything happened, quickly and quietly. Zeke simply stepped aside, caught her wrist mid-air, twisted it gently but firmly, and before Rita could shout properly, she was facing the floor. Her knees hit the ground and her arm was pinned behind her back. She screamed. Are you mad? Let me go. Zeke leaned slightly closer. Lower your voice, he said calmly. Neighbors don't need to hear. Rita struggled. Nothing worked. For the first time in her adult life, she felt powerless. You think you can do this to me? She shouted breathlessly. Zeke sighed softly. My name is Ezekiel Bello, and before I married you, I asked questions. Rita went still. I came here, he continued. I asked a whole lot of questions, and let me color your shock. I heard about Kule. I heard how he became a zombie because of you, how he became thin, and how he eventually died. Rita stopped struggling completely. You enjoyed fear, Zeke said calmly. You enjoyed control, and I decided to give you a mirror. He released her and stepped back. Rita scrambled away, backing into the wall, breathing hard. You planned this? She whispered. Yes, Zeke replied. Rita laughed nervously. You won't do anything, she said quickly. I will shout and I will disgrace you. Zeke raised one finger. Shout, he said calmly, and I will tell Arimatan what happened to your first husband. Silence fell heavily. I listened carefully, Zeke added, and I have witnesses. For the first time in years, Rita had no words. This is how it will work now, Zeke said. You will maintain your position as a wife. You will not shout at me again. You will not raise your hand again, and you will learn restraint. Rita scoffed weakly. Or what? You will beat me? Zeke shook his head. No, that alone confused her. I will not touch you. I will not insult you, and I will not humiliate you. But trust me, you will change. Because if you don't, you will learn. And you're gonna learn the hard way. That same morning, Zeke cooked breakfast. He placed the food on the table, and then Rita hesitated to eat. Afterwards, Zeke spoke again. You will rest from the motor park for a while. Rita exploded. That's my job. And I will decide if you will keep working there, Zeke added calmly. He locked her in and went for his business, but he didn't stay long in his shop before he went to the park where his wife works. That evening, he came home later than usual. He dropped his small bag on the chair and sat down quietly. Rita noticed something was different. His face was not angry, not tired, but just thoughtful. She didn't ask because of what happened earlier and for locking her up in the house since morning. They stayed quiet for a moment until Zeke finally spoke. Today, I went to the motor park. That caught her attention. Why? She asked gently. Zeke exhaled slowly. Because I wanted to know something and then end this madness once and for all. I asked people in the park about you. He looked at her carefully as if measuring how much truth she could carry. Rita, he said finally. Not one person said something good. The words landed softly but deeply. Not one person. Drivers, conductors, market women, even people she thought she had helped. None. Rita felt her throat tightened. They didn't call you strong, Zeke continued gently. They didn't call you brave and they didn't call you hardworking. They called you a shouting woman. They called you controlling. And they said people obeyed you out of fear, not respect. Rita lowered her head. Zeke did not stop there. One man even said something that made me ashamed. He said, that woman is loud like she's a smoker. But my dear, I think you are loud, controlling and always shouting because you are afraid. Rita laughed suddenly, but it was not a happy laugh. Afraid? She repeated bitterly. Like me? Zeke nodded. Yes, you are afraid of being ignored, afraid of being hurt, and afraid of being powerless. Tears welled up in her eyes. For years, Zeke said calmly, you thought shouting made you strong, but shouting only tells people one thing, that you are not at peace. Rita wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed. Zeke leaned forward slightly. Listen to me, he said. You can become better, but only if you decide to. She looked up at him. How? She whispered. Zeke smiled. There is nothing strong about controlling people, he said. There is nothing powerful about shouting. All it does is show weakness. Rita shook her head slowly. I thought if I don't shout, people will walk over me. Zeke nodded. That's what you were taught, but it's a lie. He continued. You want respect? Then respect people. You want love? Then you love people. Life works on a simple principle. What you sow is what you reap. But first, let me ask you, how did you get here? I mean, how did you become this version of what everybody is complaining about? Rita leaned back. I didn't just wake up like this, she said quietly. Zeke waited. You ask how I got here. I will tell you. She paused, gathering courage. It started when I was a teenager. Zeke listened carefully. My father was a very respected man outside, but a monster inside. At home, he beat my mother like she was nothing. He insulted her in front of people and he reduced her to silence. Her voice trembled. I watched my mother shrink every year. She stopped talking. She stopped laughing. She lived like a shadow. Rita clenched her fist and people praised my father. They called him strong. They called him the head of the house. She laughed bitterly. I hated him and I hated her weakness. One day, my father slapped my mother in my presence because the food was served late. Her voice broke. My mother apologized. That memory still hurts. That day, Rita whispered, I made a vow. She looked at Zeke. I vowed that no man would ever treat me like a rag. I vowed that no man would ever raise his voice at me. I vowed that I would be very strong. Zeke added slowly, and you walked towards it. Yes, Rita replied. I hardened myself. I spoke louder. I learned to intimidate and I learned to dominate. She wiped her tears. But I didn't realize something. What? Zeke asked. That I was becoming my father. Silence fell. That truth sat heavily between them. I thought I was fighting weakness, Rita continued, but I was repeating cruelty. Zeke finally spoke again. Strength is not becoming the opposite of your pain, he said. Strength is healing it. Rita nodded slowly. All this time, I was reacting, not living, she said. Zeke smiled gently. That is why I didn't fight you with shouting. I fought you with calm. She smiled faintly. Yes, and it worked, she admitted. Oh yes, because fear feeds on noise. When noise disappears, fear starves. Rita breathed deeply. So, what do I do now? She asked. Zeke answered calmly like a teacher who had been waiting for the question. You practice kindness, you practice humility, and you practice listening. She nodded. You will make mistakes, he added, but you don't go back to shouting. Rita looked at her hands. All my life, I thought being feared was success, she said. But today, I want to be better. Zeke smiled. Then you are already changing. That night, Rita slept peacefully for the first time in years. No anger boiling and no shouting rehearsed in her head. The next morning, she did something small but powerful. She greeted her neighbors first. People froze, then responded cautiously. Change did not happen overnight, but it happened daily. The first few weeks after that long conversation with Zeke were the hardest. Rita would wake up in the morning, open her mouth to shout, and stop halfway. Old habits fought back. Her voice would rise automatically, especially when things went wrong. More than once, she caught herself mid-sentence. Her chest would tighten, her hands would clench, then she would remember Zeke's words. Shouting only shows weakness. She would swallow the words back. Sometimes she succeeded and sometimes she failed. On days she failed, she felt terrible. She would sit quietly afterward, ashamed, replaying everything in her head. I am trying, she once said to Zeke in frustration, but it feels like I'm fighting myself. Zeke smiled gently. That's because you are, he replied, and that's how rechange feels. Rita learned something new that day, that unlearning is harder than learning itself, but she kept on trying. At first, people in Arama town didn't believe it. They waited for the old Rita to return. They assumed it was a phase and maybe a strategy. But days turned into weeks and weeks into months, and the shouting didn't return. The motor park felt it first. Before, the park was like a boxing ring, at least one fight every day. Drivers shouting, conductors pushing, and insults flying like mosquitoes. Rita had thrived in that chaos. Now, when she came around, she didn't back orders. She spoke calmly, firm but respectful. At first, the men were confused. Is she sick? Has someone charmed her? They asked. One day, when two drivers started quarreling loudly, she just walked up quietly. She didn't shout and she didn't insult either of them. She just said, if you fight, both of you will lose your money today, and that fight ended immediately. Fights reduced afterwards, not because people were afraid, but because calm had entered leadership. The market women noticed as well. Rita now greeted people first, not with sarcasm, not with attitude, but with respect. At first, people answered cautiously, ready for explosion, but it never came. At home, she changed even more. She became a good wife not by kneeling or pretending to be weak, but by being intentional. She discussed things with Zeke instead of commanding him. She listened and she apologized when she was wrong. That alone shocked Zeke sometimes. One evening, she said quietly, I am sorry for raising my voice earlier. Zeke looked at her carefully and then smiled. That smile meant more than any praise. She also changed financially. She stopped spending recklessly just to show power. She became disciplined. She started bringing money home regularly. They started savings and planning as they were now working as a team. Soon, they had conversations about land, which graduated to conversations about building, and before long, they had their own edifice. Rita developed a habit that shocked everyone. She started calling her husband my lord, not because she was afraid and not because she was forced, but because she was grateful. Grateful that Zeke had heard terrible things about her and still married her. Grateful that he did not use her past as a weapon, and grateful that he did not punish her with humiliation. Instead, he healed her with patience and he changed her. And now she's using her greatest weapon as a woman, her femininity. She had never imagined her name would be associated with peace. Until today, Rita remains loyal, respects and honors her husband, and Arima Town learns a lesson it will never forget. People don't change because they are beaten. They change when they are understood and guided. Hey, African Tales by Calmness Tribe, how are you all doing? For me, I am doing just fine. I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I did. Before I leave today, Permit me to say this. If there is one thing the story should leave in your heart, it is that no one is beyond change. It doesn't matter how bad someone had been. It doesn't matter how loud, bitter, broken, or controlling they once were. And it doesn't matter how many people they hurt in the past. Anyone can change. Real change begins when a person meets Christ and is surrounded by the right people. Christ does not meet us to condemn us, He meets us to heal us. He does not shout at our brokenness, He restores it. That is why the Bible says, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. All things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. When Christ enters a heart, He doesn't just change behavior, He changes direction. And when God places the right people around you, people who correct with love, guide with patience, and refuse to give up on you, transformation becomes possible. Some people are loud because they are wounded. Some are controlling because they are afraid. Some are harsh because they never saw gentleness growing up. But wounds can heal. Fear can melt, and harshness can be replaced with love. If you see yourself in Rita, don't be discouraged. Your past does not cancel your future. And if you see someone you love struggling, don't give up on them too quickly. Sometimes all they need is Christ and one patient person who refuses to let them remain broken. Dear Karma Tribe, I leave you with this. God is still in the business of writing lives. No matter how messy the first chapters were, and where Christ writes a story, the ending is always better than the beginning. Kindly give the story a thumbs up. Share out your thoughts with me in the comment section as I would love to read them. Share the story to your loved ones and subscribe to this channel if you have not already done so. And until I bring the next interesting story your way, it is a goodbye from here, and God bless you.